Okay, I hope I'm audible to all my students who are attending this particular lecture for the Cambridge International AS Level Economics course. In this particular lecture, I'm going to continue with the discussion of the first module within the AS Economics Cambridge course. This is Basic Economic Ideas and Resource Allocation. Now, all my students can recall that in the previous lessons, we have been discussing about the concept of scarcity, opportunity costs, and all these kind of concepts, the central problems faced by all the economies, like what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. We have been discussing all this in the previous lessons. Now, in this particular lesson, we are going to look at the second chapter within module 1. This is economic methodology. So we are going to look at, first of all, we are going to learn what is economics, why is it a social science, okay? And we're also going to talk about the branches within economics. We're going to talk about the key differences between microeconomics and macroeconomics, which are the two main branches we study within the economics course. We're also going to talk about some important terminologies like what is meant by ceteris paribus, what is meant by thinking at the margin. We usually say that economists think at the margin. So, what does that usually mean? Remember, we also do some theories where we use the assumption of ceteris paribus. So, what does that mean? We also look at the time periods within economics, like the short time period, the long run, the very long run. So, all these important methodologies I plan to cover in this particular lesson. Okay, so I'm starting with making students write some crisp notes on all these topics. So I hope all students who are watching this particular lesson, you have something, a paper and a pen to make notes, because I always stress that when you are making notes, you're also absorbing them once, and it always helps you in revising these concepts again. Okay, so let's quickly start with the discussion of this particular lesson on topic 2, economic methodology, module 1, basic economic ideas and resource allocation. So let's quickly start with this lesson. So just for clarity, I'm writing the main heading. We are still on module 1, basic economic ideas and resource allocation. And within this, we are on chapter 2, economic methodology. Okay, so let's look at, first of all, what is economics actually? Why do we say that economics is a social science? Or why do we study economics under social science? Okay, so I can write that economics is considered a social science. What does the word social here mean, students? Now, when we talk about social science, we talk about human behavior. We talk about how humans interact. What do they think? Okay. And how they use the resources in the economy to satisfy their own needs and wants. So I can write that the social aspect is because human behavior, because economics, let me correct myself, because economics looks at human behavior, economics looks at human behavior, particularly in relation particularly in relation to satisfying human needs and wants. Okay. The reason why we look at economics as a social science is because economics is going to focus on the human behavior, okay, which is backed by human needs and wants. Okay, why is it called a science? Because like any other science, be it physics or biology or chemistry, you have theories in economics which the economists are willing to investigate and come up with conclusions or laws. So I can say that economics is also a science. This is because of the way that economists put forward and investigate theories in the same way as scientists. In the same way as scientists. Okay, so economists are concerned with formulating hypotheses, formulating theories, testing them, okay, and coming up with valid conclusions. Like we do in all other sciences, like I said, physics or biology, etc. Okay, these theories which the economists come up with are usually called models. Okay, so I can erase the initial portion of and I can write that the theories put forward by economists are often referred to as models, which are a simplified representation of what has actually taken place, and are usually explained mathematically. These models are usually explained mathematically. Okay, so hoping students have understood this. We have talked about economics as a social science. We have talked about the fact that why is it social? Because it is all concerned with human behavior, okay, in relation to human needs and wants. We have talked about the fact that why is it a science? Because like any other science, here economists are concerned with formulating theories. They put forward a theory, they investigate it, and then they either accept or reject their theory. Okay, and economists often have this habit of using models in place, where models are nothing but mathematical representations of the theory they are willing to prove. Okay, so I hope everything so far is in order and students have understood this. Now, let's look at the branches within economics. We talk about two main branches in economics, which is micro and macroeconomics. So if I erase all this, so I can draw a flow chart where we have economics classified into micro and macroeconomics. Microeconomics and macroeconomics. let us understand what is microeconomics concerned with. Now, micro itself means small. So when you are looking at the branch of microeconomics, you are basically concerned with individual units, like individual households, individual firms, okay, or one particular industry, okay. And when you are looking at aggregates, that is macroeconomics. When you're looking at the whole, that means the whole economy, all firms in the economy, all households in the economy. Okay. So when you talk about one individual's demand, that is studied under microeconomics. But when you talk about the aggregate demand, that is studied under macroeconomics. When you talk about one individual's income, we study that under microeconomics. When you talk about the national income of the economy, we do that under macroeconomics. Okay. So I can write microeconomics is the study of individual markets. It is a study of the individual markets. It looks at the behavior and decisions of households and firms and how they interact. This is all we do within the microeconomics course. We look at households, we look at firms, how do they behave, how do they interact in market. Okay, we talk about how governments intervene in these markets. Okay, so it is all about individual markets. We are not talking about aggregates within the microeconomics model. Okay, so for example, one of the microeconomics topic would be that factors which can explain why consumers buy some goods and not others. Factors explaining why consumers buy some goods and not others is, I can write, is a topic in microeconomics. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, will talk about the whole economy. So macroeconomics is the study of the whole economy or maybe even a group of economies. Like economies within Asia, economies within, let's say, Europe, economies, the Western economies, US, Canada, London. Okay. So when we talk about macroeconomics, we are not talking about individual. Now we are talking about the whole. We are talking about a group. So I can write macroeconomics. I can continue forward with the explanation. Macroeconomics also looks at how consumers and firms interact, but not at individual level now. How consumers and firms interact, but on a broader level. So we are not concerned about individual levels now. Households and firms interacting in one particular market was micro, but households and firms interacting in the whole economy at a much broader level is macroeconomics. And I can also write that macroeconomics is likely to include some form of government involvement. You always have some intervention from the government. Okay, example would be, so suppose I want to look at inflation. why is the economy experiencing such high inflation, or why one economy grows much faster than the other. All these are topics we do within the macroeconomics course. Okay, so reasons why one economy grows faster than the other is a topic in macroeconomics. Obviously, students can take many other examples, whatever comes to your mind, but your example should be reflective of the fact that something to do with the aggregate is macro and something to do with the individual is micro. Okay, so I hope all students attending this lesson are convinced about the difference between these two branches within economics. Okay, now the next thing, when economists make statements, obviously when we read economics times or when we read newspapers, we see that there are certain statements made, be it regarding business or be it regarding economics in general. Now again, we need to learn what what of these statements, which statements are actual statements which are supported by evidences, and which of these statements are mere judgments made by economists or policymakers. So here comes another very important concept in this lesson, which is the difference between positive and normative statements. Positive and normative statements. So let's understand what is a positive statement and let's understand what is a normative statement. So I can write positive statements often refer to facts or what will happen based on actual observation. This is very important. Based on actual observation or evidence. When you are making a positive statement, it is backed by or it is supported by some evidence. You are not just passing a statement without any evidence. You have evidence, you have a strong evidence, you have a strong observation to support what you are saying, and it's a fact. Okay, so usually economists in this case don't give a judgment, they don't give their opinion, it's a fact. So this is a positive statement. For example, when we read the headlines that there is a fall in the supply of petrol, which can lead to lines at the gas pump, because if supply falls, people would line up and that in turn would increase the price. So a fall in the supply of petrol, let's say crude oil or the inputs have become more expensive, so the profit margins have gone down, leading to a fall in the supply of petrol. It leads to an increase in its price. Now this is a fact. Okay, it's a fact. Similarly, if we say that the inflation rate in the economy, after having done our research, we have said that the inflation rate in the economy in the year 2021 is 8%. It's a fact. It's an actual observation. It has been backed by strong evidence. So all these are positive statements. Now, what are normative statements? I can write normative statements Normative statements often refer to opinions. These are not facts, these are opinions or value judgments. These are opinions or value judgments that can no longer be proven. That can no longer be proven. You are making a statement which is opinionated. You are just sharing your opinion and you have not proved it. It's not backed by any evidence. Okay, so positive statements are backed by a strong evidence. These are actual observations. Normative statements, when you make a normative statement, you are just giving a suggestion. You're giving your opinion, but that is not backed by any strong evidence as such. Purely value judgments. Okay, so for example, if I use the same example as above, so a fall in the supply of petrol leads to an increase in its price. But if I write a fall in the supply of petrol, a fall in the supply of petrol should lead to an increase in price. This will now become a normative statement. The moment I add the word should, it means I'm giving an opinion. In the first case, I was not giving any opinion. It was a fact. But if I pass an opinion, that becomes a normative statement. Should lead to an increase in price. This is a normative statement. Another statement I can make, the second statement, but I can mold it like this. The inflation rate of 8% in the year 2021 was the worst in 10 years. That means in the past 10 years, this inflation rate has been worst, couldn't have been much higher. The inflation rate of 8% in the year 2021 was the worst in 10 years. This is again, I'm giving a judgment. I'm giving an opinion that it was worst. It might be possible that someone else's opinion might be different from me. So it's not a fact, it's an opinion. The moment I add the word worst, it means I'm opinionated, I'm giving an opinion. And opinions can vary across economists. It's not necessary that all economists are having the same opinion. But facts cannot be opinionated. Facts are merely facts. You can't disprove them. They are all backed by strong evidences. But when you are giving an opinion that inflation in your economy has been the worst, you are being judgmental. You're giving a judgment. Maybe others might not agree with you on that. So that is the normative statement now. Okay, so I hope students are all clear with the difference between positive and normative statements. Okay, then let's talk about what is meant by ceteris paribus. Okay, so if I erase all this off, so within terminologies, we now talk about ceteris paribus. We use this quite frequently in economic models. Okay, so ceteris paribus is a Latin term widely used by economists, which refers to a situation where other things remain equal. Other things remain equal. or unchanged. Okay, so when you are formulating economic theories, you have to make some assumptions. For example, if I'm looking at the law, if I'm looking at how demand is affected by what all factors affect the demand for a commodity. Now, price of a commodity affects the demand, your income also affects your demand. Okay, your tastes and preferences affect your demand, your price expectations about what is going to be the price in the future affects your demand. Now, it's not possible to let all these factors influence demand simultaneously. Otherwise, it won't be possible for us to net out which factor is significantly affecting demand. So we make the assumption of ceteris paribus. Even when we look at the law of demand, okay, we look at the impact of price on demand by keeping all other factors like tastes and preferences, income, price of other goods, everything else is kept constant. As economists, why do we do this? We do this because only then we'll be able to formulate or come up with a valid theory which can explain the hypothesis. If we do not make the assumption of ceteris paribus, if we let all variables change, it will be very complex or almost impossible to find out what is going to be the impact on the variable we are interested in looking at. So if we talk about demand, it is influenced by so many factors. Price of own good. It is also affected by price of related goods like substitutes and complements. We're going to do this later as well in depth. It also depends upon how much income I earn. It also depends upon my tastes and preferences. It also depends upon price expectations. Do I expect the price of the good I'm willing to buy? Will that price increase in the future or not? Price expectations. Okay, so many factors are influencing demand. When we make the assumption of ceteris paribus, we are keeping, suppose I want to look at the price of own good on demand, I am keeping price expectations, tastes and preferences, my income, price of related goods constant. And then I see, okay, when the price of the own good changes, how is my demand getting affected? So this is also constant, this is also constant, this is also constant, this is also constant. That is where the law of demand comes. Ceteris paribus, keeping all of the factors constant. When price of the own good increases, it becomes expensive, I demand less of it. When price goes up, demand goes down, keeping all other factors constant. So ceteris paribus is the assumption of keeping all of the factors constant. Okay, so I stop in this particular lecture. It was particularly a short lesson. Okay, in the next lesson, we talk about why do economists, what is meant by thinking at the margin. So we talk about margin, thinking at the margin. Thinking at the margin. Okay, we're going to talk about how economists think at the margin in making decisions. Thinking at the margin in decision making. We are also going to talk about time periods in economics. And what are the difference between these time periods? And we are also going to do some MCQ practice based on the concepts we have covered so far. Okay, so all this is going to be the agenda for the next lesson. So I stop in this lesson. I hope students have enjoyed this lesson. Any doubt, you can unmute your mic and ask, or you can get in touch with me for doubts on call or WhatsApp, or you can mail me your doubts at divineschoolofeconomics@gmail.com. This is where I stop in this lesson.